Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're talking about Fables, Volume 22, and also Issue 150. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Well, we've done it. We finished Fables, that's right. We read all of Fables in an entire year. If you did along with me, fantastic. Not many of you did, but if you're going to do it, do it. It was a good read. Although, we got to talk about this volume. This is the final volume, Volume 22, and I got to say, it's a bit underwhelming. I mean, look at this big, thick trade. You're going to get, oh my gosh, 6 issues of one story all in one thing, like, paced like a single issue, or who the hell knows, like, you're going to read it all at once. Now, I guess this matters more for the people who are reading it in person or in floppies at the time when it came out. I mean, this is, almost 10 years old, at least. And to get the final issue and to see it as like a big, thick trade, it must have been really exciting. The downside is that this is all not the last issue. I mean, if you're looking here, you're basically all this little white spot on the paper here, if you can make it out, is the final issue, and then most of everything else is like, this is like one of the lighter pages. Most of this whole section is all just like wrap up stuff, and not wrap up stuff in a natural way. It's like, here's a 2-page story, here's a 2-page story, here's a 2-page story. Don't get me wrong, they are wonderful 2-page stories about all of your favorite minor characters, and wrapping up their stories or setting them off on a last adventure in a fun way. However, what it doesn't do is give you the satisfaction of the conclusion of the storyline in its entirety, much less all the build-up we had in the last 2 volumes, Rose Red and Happily Ever After, where we were building up to this big battle, this big conclusion between Snow White, and in almost typical Fables fashion, Bill Willingham writes his way out of a real battle or a real conflict in a way that, feels a little hokey, I guess you would say. So it was a bit of a letdown for me. The best part about this is the art, though. Like, Mark Buckingham is breaking out a whole bunch of tricks here. He's adopted, you're not getting the regular Fables per se. You're getting this very detailed kind of painterly style with the ink wash. Still have Steve Leohola on the ink, still have the same colorist as all that, but it looks a little bit different. It looks a little bit more grand than the last couple of volumes of Fables you've read, because he is changing up a style. This is his magnum opus, his final parting shot at Fables, and he's going all out. So, and most of the final issue actually does take place in these large 2-page spreads, which I gotta say, I think it's fine as a concept if you're reading it in floppies to have a bunch of 2-page spreads. I think, when it's laying flat, okay, cool. But I'm a little concerned or curious as to why they did this when they knew that they were going to collect this as one big trade as the final issue. Like, this was on comic shop stands or spinner racks, if those still exist. You know what I mean? Like, this was next to your single issue, 22-page issue of Batman, 32 with ads, as, the final issue. It's sold for regular trade paperback price, $18 or, $17.99 USA. But to have all of these large spreads and just the spine, what you call it, the gap here, some of them work better than others because you break it out by panels, and then some of them here, you're just missing a whole lot in the spine here, and it's just like, why? Like, I get it, it's beautiful, they're going to make great sales one day when you sell these pages or whatever, but if you're going to collect everything as a trade, if you knew it at the time, why are you structuring your pages in such a way that it's going to take away from the art? That's my only point. Now, when you get things like this where you just got the panel borders in the middle, like, that's typical Fables, there's nothing important in the middle here. But there's other pages, and most of this is these big 2-page spreads. Now, there's no word balloons in them or anything, thank goodness, but man, oh man, it just feels a little like, why are you doing it this way? A little bizarre. So I gotta say, like, this is disappointing because we had this big buildup for the last 10 issues or so, and we didn't get the resolution to that conflict, or we didn't get the conflict we were expecting. Rose found out her parentage, the whole secret behind her parentage, that these sisters are destined to kill each other again and again and again, and they can only ever have daughters, etc., etc., and that's why she's facing off against Snow White so suddenly, because all the power has flown into either of them, that all the magic that their mother possessed, and now it seems there can only be one, a little bit like Highlander. So instead of telling Snow White this story, Snow White is just kind of like, well, I know my sister Rose is moving against me, so I might as well collect an army and move against her in that sort of way. So what you're missing here is like the revelation of the history and the storytelling to Snow White in order for her to understand her sister's machinations, her origins, her not her origins, but her why she's thinking, what she's doing, all this sort of stuff. All that is not there. So there's no level of understanding when you finally get the resolution to this conflict between the sisters. It's just, okay, I guess so, like, see you later, bye. And Rose even says towards the end of this book, like, we were never that close as sisters, or I never loved you, or I was never a good sister to you all the time anyway. So what difference does this resolution make? You know what I mean? And that was like, man, because you read the story with these sisters, you saw them apart, you saw them grow together, and you saw them kind of separate here towards the end, and it doesn't really play as a tragedy either, because there is no big like tragedy here in this resolution. So I think that's what threw me off. I think also too, again, you're taking a number of characters off the board. Frau Totenkinder, Bigby, all these guys are just, being kind of wiped away in a way that seems very, very fast. We had this whole setup with Bigby missing this piece of glass from himself, being fashioned into a ring, and Rose got it at the end of the last volume and was talking about how she was going to make Bigby love her when this was all over. She never moves on that, and much less she just gives the ring back to Bigby. But at the time, it doesn't even seem like it matters that much to Bigby anyway. To get this last piece of himself, that's not the thing that turns him back into a normal person. And I get how they did that, like, with his interaction with the kids and things like that. But I really felt like that should have been a combination of the two things, rather than get this little ring back much, much later. So I really didn't understand that. And then they're just taking away things so quickly here in this, and I think that's my problem, is if you took this whole last issue and actually made it across all these pages, whether you waited for Mark Buckingham to do it all, or you had other artists jump in as well, I think it would have worked, because you would have had the space to tell this story in a grander fashion, a grander scale. Instead, it feels a little bit rushed, or more like a cash grab, maybe on DC Vertigo's part, because you have this last issue being an $18 issue, as opposed to a regular trade paperback or whatever. So, and therefore, because we decided on that on marketing, we're adding a whole bunch of stuff in the back here with these little vignettes and stuff that other artists are going to help out and do. So I'm not really sure where the idea came from, but the execution here is lacking. So it's either he couldn't have enough story to fill another 6 issues or whatever, or maybe he's running out of time. I don't know if so-and-so was sick or whatever, but it falls a little bit flat because you're rushing through all these conclusions, all these endings, when you spent the last 10 issues having a big, big build-up to what felt like was going to be a long denouement of a conclusion, a conflict resolution, conclusion, and then kind of the tail off of what is actually really this book is about, is finishing all these little stories. So I think in that way it's a little bit unsatisfying. Don't get me wrong, don't think that Fables wasn't a great read. It was. But it was great because of the volume of it and the difference of stories you got and the innovative ways that Bill Willingham crafted these characters around these existing stories. It's not great just because of this final issue. And ultimately, like I feel the same way a little bit about why The Last Man's last volume, or its last issue, just flashing forward to the far, far future with Yorick, and having that be like that last issue there really left me cold, and this whole volume kind of does a little bit as well. So, while I'm still going to recommend Fables to readers of all stripes, I'm not going to be like, wow, this really ended with a bang, I guess I've seen stories that have that here in a 6-issue tale, but a long, drawn out series, I don't know if I found that yet. I know I've read Preacher before, and I really did like that, but we're gonna read that at some point also, so we'll explore that there and be like, all right, these Vertigo series are really well lauded, but which of them really hit home in the last couple of volumes and had a big conclusion? Because it wasn't Y the Last Man, and it's not Fables. So I'm a little bit bummed out, but don't get me wrong, I did enjoy the read. It's just this last volume doesn't pay off the last 10 issues of build-up you read. So that's my big complaint, and I feel like that's the number one thing of a storyteller is if you're going to have an ending of a story, give yourself the room to tell that ending as opposed to rushing through it, right? So let me know down below if you guys enjoyed Fables. What did you think of this last volume, this 150th issue? It's got a beautiful pull-out cover. You got the credits on this side and the other pages over here. It's really, really well done, but man, it's just that the story's lacking. Let me know down below in the comments what you guys felt. We'll see you guys next time in the Funny Pages.